Okay, you guys, shut up. I want to talk to you about Emilia Perez. I have to pause and think twice every time I say the title because I keep wanting to say Evita Peron. Don't cry for me, Argentina. What do you guys think Patti LuPone thinks of this movie? Forget what I have to say. We should all be asking Patti LuPone what she thinks about this movie. So everybody and their cat has been talking about Emilia Perez and what a terrible movie musical it is. And I love musicals, so of course I had to watch it. I was even gonna reinstate my Netflix account and pay a whole $8. But in the end I didn't because I convinced the Netflix overlord that I still live with my mom in Quebec. I'm a criminal. So after finishing my illegal viewing, I have some terrible news. It's not that bad. Don't get me wrong, it is both a bad movie in its own right and a bad musical. The songs are forgettable, the characters suck, any visuals or blocking used to make the musical numbers look more interesting are completely random and don't actually add anything to the song's thesis, and its portrayal of everything from Mexican culture to the realities of transgender life are, for lack of a better word, yicky. But the discussions I had around the film, as well as the short clips I had seen, had me hoping for so much better. And by better, I mean worse. Because of course, the best musicals are great musicals, but the second best musicals are so bad it's good musicals. I mean, think about when the movie Cats was released. It was such a monumental experience that we all had to just kind of go inside and sit for a year. Now, I'm not the first brave soul to say that sometimes it's fun to watch really bad movies, but I don't know if it's something we talk enough about when it comes to movie musicals, which is wild because this is a genre that naturally thrives off the campy, the unrealistic, the larger than life. And yet, I feel that especially in recent years, we have been plagued by terribly middling movie musicals. So today I am going to dissect what makes a musical truly good, truly bad, and just tragically kinda not great. First off, the thing that makes a musical, music. A good score in a musical should do a few things. It should move the story along, develop our understanding of the characters, and also just slap. Some people will say if you're not humming a tune as you walk out, it's not a good musical. I think that's a very specific traditional kind of musical theater that strives to be catchy in the same way that pop music is, but other kinds of musicals will make their music memorable in different ways. Stephen Sondheim popularized motifs, short measures of music that correspond to a specific character or theme or story element and that reoccur throughout the score so that when we think of that tune, we think of that thing, and when we think of that thing, we think of that tune. That's Rapunzel in Into the Woods. That's kind of all she does in that show, except die. And in the movie, she doesn't even do that. I think the best bad musicals are the ones with scores that have made the brave decision to have nothing to do with anything, but still slap. Let's look at the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Whether it's a good movie or a bad movie is debatable, but it shares many similarities with the B movies that are often synonymous with the so bad it's good movement, and this includes its structure as a musical. Some of these tunes were so clearly written without the plot in mind at all, and while others do speak to what's happening in the story, they are so jankily connected to the dialogue that they still feel out of nowhere. But every single one of them is catchy as hell, and this makes you want to watch those numbers over and over again, even as you wonder what the hell is going on. In fact, the lyrics barely having anything to do with anything actually makes them more memorable. It's been said before, but I'll say it again. What is a science examine? Firstly, a musical that is just kind of bad makes the brave decision to have a score that is boring as dirt. Some popular crimes include having the same kind of song over and over, for example, ballad after ballad, or having songs that really barely have a melody at all and certainly not a hook. Emilia Perez is guilty of a lot of these crimes, and I'm so serious about it this time, most of these numbers are too short. I was serious when I said the Romanian dance number in Nosferatu needs to be longer, but this time I'm super serious. I hear the extended cut of that movie is only 4 minutes longer. Please join me in a quick prayer circle to manifest that it's all in that dance number. I know it seems counterintuitive to make a not good number longer in order to make it better, but if you want a song to be catchy, give us a chance to catch it. And if you want a song to further the plot or develop a character, give the character a chance to express more than their surface thoughts. Give us an arc with a beginning, middle, end, something that couldn't have just been said in one line of dialogue. And if all else fails, go full Richard O'Brien and give us something ridiculous. The song that has gone viral from Emilia Perez has done so because it's just so much. You know which one I'm talking about. None of the lyrics in this movie are particularly good, but this number is especially clunky, especially to my ear, because it's written by a French guy for a Spanish character who is speaking English. And it's so much easier and funner to remember the objectively absurd lyrics from this song than any of the pseudo-poetic stuff we get in every other song. Man to woman, or woman to man, man to woman, from penis to vagina. How could you write that and keep a straight face? And once you've written it, how could you not think that it's the most important thing you will ever write? On top of that, the setting of a hospital with eerie, smiling cosmetic surgery patients being wheeled around while Zoe Saldana flits manically about them is giving very Repo the Genetic Opera, another wonderfully terrible movie musical. And it's far more interesting than the other settings throughout the movie that they half-heartedly try to jazz up with background dancers and bright colored lights. I've been distracted by bright lights before, but not for 2+ hours. 90 minutes top. Do I look like The Rock in that one photo with this black shirt and necklace? He should be in a musical. If every one of the numbers in this movie had the campiness of this one, this would be such a fun watching experience. But instead we get a bunch of tuneless, soulless, minute-long ditties that you'll struggle to remember, the way you struggle not to sing penis to vagina when you're making breakfast or sitting on the subway. Now let's talk about casting. I have a hot take about casting movie musicals that's going to make all the Broadway girlies want to throw their overpriced drinks in my face. I think Hollywood is right not to cast Broadway stars just because they have the best voice. Interpreting song for the camera is a very unique form of expression. It's different from just screen acting, but it's also very different from acting for the theater. There are theater actors who have adapted to the screen wonderfully, but there are also film actors who have used their on-camera experience to turn out an amazing cinematic musical performance. And there have also been actors on either side of the equation who have failed miserably. For every Russell Crowe looking absolutely constipated in Les Mis, you have a Ben Platt in the Dear Evan Hansen movie, just refusing to give us less, girl, and destroying any sense of realism with his performance designed for a 1,000-seat theater. The key to casting the perfect movie musical is knowing who to put where. What parts need that vocal prowess? What roles need the acting chops? And where can we sprinkle in a name with a little box office draw? It also helps to never cast James Corden. This is where we talk about the other side of the coin, the yin to Emilia Perez's yang, the witch flying in the western sky to the mariachi musician just kind of standing outside Mexico City for some reason. Wicked. Wicked has the best casting a movie musical has had in some time, and it's because they didn't just get a bunch of powerhouse voices or a bunch of Hollywood stars. They found the balance. For Elphaba, they knew they needed someone with insane vocals and emotional intensity, preferably not someone who was completely green to working on camera, but the ability to do the part justice was far more important than the ability to get non-Broadway fans to buy tickets, and Cynthia Erivo was the perfect fit for that. For the Wizard and Madame Morrible, they got film actors capable of delivering the nuance and presence necessary for these high-status, morally ambiguous characters, and the fact that they just happen to be Jeff Goldblum and Michelle Yeoh really didn't hurt either. That they don't have Broadway-caliber voices isn't as important because their singing parts are both more minimal and far more reasonable range-wise. And also, if you don't skip Sentimental Man while listening to any version of the Wicked soundtrack, you are absolutely unhinged. You have Peter Dinklage as Dr. Dillamond, and that's good because unlike the rumors that circulated early on in the casting process, he is not James Corden. Next up, we have Ariana Grande, who was the wild card, with many assuming she'd been cast only for her huge fan base. But unlike many A-listers who were considered for the role, she has a theatrical background that granted her many of the skills needed to crush this role, and perhaps more importantly, a huge love and respect for the material that led her to work hard for any of the skills she didn't have at the time of her casting. And then they also said, let's get Bowen Yang in there. We want Bowen Yang to just be being Bowen Yang in the background. And for some reason, that was the piece that brought it all together. And then there was the guy from Bridgerton, as well as the horse from Bridgerton, and he was very sexy. The guy, not the horse. Although that is kind of an option in this universe. Now, the power of casting in a so bad it's good musical is the power of not giving a crap. I think a good example of this is Mamma Mia. Now, I know I'll earn another faceful of beverage for suggesting that the Mamma Mia movie is bad in any way, but come on, the casting directors were absolutely on one here. There are some unironic gems. Christine Baranski and Julie Walters are an unmatched duo, but Meryl Streep was playing a 40-year-old at 59. Pierce Brosnan clearly went to the Russell Crowe School of Musical Theatre with a major in constipated singing, and the character of Bill went from being Australian to being Swedish because Skarsgårds. If that weren't crazy enough, in the sequel, Cher is cast as Meryl Streep's mother. Do you know how many years Cher has on Meryl Streep? It's the same number of dads in this movie. But Meryl Streep is smart enough to know that she's playing a role designed for a Broadway belter 20 years younger than her. Because she knows this, she just turns up the camp and has a good time with it, as does all the cast, except for Pierce Brosnan, who again very much looks like he's in pain. Someone please help him. This joy is infectious, and you leave the movie feeling absolutely great, and also like maybe you should go to Greece. The problem with Emilia Perez is that they try and get the casting right and then just kind of give up. They cast actors of Latin descent who could speak Spanish, but from accounts of people whose knowledge of Spanish expands beyond an 11th grade classroom and a DVD of the telenovela Ruby, as mine does, they didn't check to see how believable some of their accents were, and they barely cast anyone from Mexico. They cast performers who could sing, but if any of them could give a Broadway caliber performance, they weren't utilized that way. And they cast a trans woman in the lead role, thank God, and then gave her the most one-dimensional, obviously written by a cis person depiction of transness ever. It's a shame because I think Carla Sofia Gascon has a lovely voice, but her songs are the ones I'd be least likely to listen to because it's all just her being, I want to be a woman, but sometimes I also love my children, and sometimes I'm okay with killing people. The problem with them trying half-heartedly to do things right is that they're then defensive about doing it wrong. Many viewers have spoken out about how if the writer-director wasn't going to do any research about Mexico before filming an entire movie set there, in France, it would have been nice if he at least hired more Mexican talent. But the casting director shot back and said that they did do a very wide search, including, we presume, Mexican actors, but the actors they chose were just the best for the job, which is a statistical wonder, right? The very best actors for the script just happened to be Hollywood stars like Zoe Saldana and Selena Gomez. Don't lie to me. Just say you wanted to see the woman from Avatar sing about gender reassignment surgery. Sorry. 6 change operations. Next, we're going to talk about content and tone. When I was in 7th or 8th grade, I was, of course, a musical theater kid, but I wasn't a normal musical theater kid. I was a cool musical theater kid. I liked Rent, Spring Awakening, Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and I hated High School Musical. I thought not only was its wafer-thin plot and family-friendly vibe just not for me, but that it was irresponsible. I worried that because it was so popular, everyone of my generation would think that all musicals were like that, fluffy and inconsequential, that they couldn't have substance. High School Musical, I am so sorry, sweetie. Take away the substance. I don't want the substance. Not the substance of the movie. I actually still haven't seen it. No spoilers! I think I want to put the blame on Dear Evan Hansen. I don't know if I should, but I want to, so I will. With the success of Dear Evan Hansen on Broadway, producers and writers discovered that younger audiences will come to the theater not just for fun, lighthearted musicals or to see Jeremy Jordan flex. They'll pay to see real issues on stage: depression, family tensions, isolation in the age of social media, in as much nuance as can be delivered in a 2.5-hour runtime, including intermission, while still appealing to the family tourist crowd. And I don't think it's such a terrible idea to talk about issues a little deeper than who's getting the lead in the big show, or which of your mom's past lovers knocked her up. But the level and speed at which musicals like The Prom and Everybody's Talking About Jamie were just turned out leads me to believe that no one was actually really interested in exploring the theme of the disenfranchised teenager as much as they were interested in getting that bag before the next trend dropped. And the worst part is, none of these musicals were terrible. They were mediocre. Emilia Perez is the Oscar bait version of Dear Evan Hansen. Let's be honest, anytime a movie hits you with the multilingualism, you know there's a good chance it's Oscar bait. And I'm not talking about the Spanish, I'm talking about the English. Why are any of these scenes in English? Were they just so desperate to put the script through another level of Google Translate? And then there's the buzzwordy themes chosen for this movie: the Mexican cartel, the life of a transgender woman, the life of a closeted transgender woman running a Mexican cartel. None of these topics were particularly well explored before we move on to a quick song where Selena Gomez is grumpy or Zoe Saldana humps a wig. No one talks about that moment where she humps a wig. And this isn't totally relevant, but another thing that unites Emilia Perez with Dear Evan Hansen is just how morally bad the title characters are. They both literally start charities based on lies. But this movie seems even more ignorant to how this makes the character look bad. For example, she helps a mother find out what happened to her son, who was taken by the cartel, because as Zoe Saldana's character reminds her, she was the cartel for a hot second, so probably responsible for, if not this kid's death, then many like him. And when the mother kisses Emilia's forehead for helping her find closure in her son's murder, you think maybe it's gonna be a moment of guilt where she feels like a fraud for how complicit she is in all this, but instead she's just like, I feel really good about this. I'm gonna make being a good person who helps people my entire personality. And then when Selena Gomez pisses her off, she's like, actually, violence. Back to violence. Again, I don't think a musical is bad or good based on whether it chooses to be a lighthearted romp or a meaningful tearjerker. That's an opinion I put aside around the same time that Rent closed. But I do think that if you choose to explore certain topics, you have a responsibility to do it to completion. One of my favorite musicals from back in my edgy musical theater years was Next to Normal, and not just because it featured Aaron Tveit in Nothing But a Towel. The history of that show is that the creators discovered that electroshock therapy was still a thing that was actively being used in medicine, and they thought it would make a really good dark comedy. But as they researched it and the typical scenarios where a patient may be prescribed ECT, they ended up gravitating towards a much more grounded, nuanced story because that's what the subject matter called for. And if I take a look back at the script, it's probably not a perfect depiction of mental illness, but at least the writers took the time to research the topic they were utilizing and monetizing for their art. And if you're not willing to do that, then for God's sakes, make it terrible. Give us Tim Curry in a corset and an afro, goddammit. But please, everyone, go ahead and give me your hot takes about everyone's favorite Oscar contender, Emilia Perez. Let me know what you think are the best and the best worst musicals of recent years. Please like and subscribe, and maybe when I get to 100 subscribers, I'll drop my own mediocre song. And as always, have a delicious day. Moana! The Rock was already in Moana.